Welcome to the J.R. Hendrix Texan Gentleman, a podcast that deals with the early life of J.R. Hendrix. This episode has his father on the approach with Greg Sanders on Raynard News. Now back to the approach with Greg Sanders. I got enough talking about the model. Earlier today, I sat down in the Gainesville estate of James Ryan Hendrix, the Director of Policy and Liaison with the Small Business Administration and the Administrator for the Entrepreneurial Affairs Administration. Jim, how are you doing today? In many ways, in some ways better than I deserve. Jim, this news story about the model that was murdered up in New York earlier this year. I suppose you heard the latest about the drug trafficking ring and how Clinton says he'll clamp down on drug trafficking. Clinton says a lot of things. One thing I was shocked to find out when I guess I was about, 3 months in office. He cut funding employees with the ONDCP. And, it's 96. You'd think he'd be wearing an egg on his face, but it don't look too good. Jim, I have via satellite in his home in Houston, Texas. Mr. President, how are you? Very well, thanks. Now, Mr. President, you won the coin toss, so we're going to start this debate. And Jim, you've been ready for this. I have been. So, Mr. Bush, why don't you go open with the question? Mr. Hendrix, I appreciate you coming back to us and making amends. And, of course, to Barbara and I, and to Laura and George, a peace offering is still in order. You'll get that. But here's my question. Why won't you support Bob Dole for the Republican nomination for president? I want to throw back this question. Why are you supporting him? Why couldn't you throw him behind somebody like Phil Gramm or Pat Buchanan? Logical reasonings. It would tear the party wide open. I don't think that's a wise decision at this juncture. Wouldn't be prudent. Mr. Hendrix, your response. At this point, I will support Republicans in all the national races in respect to their respective states. Those running for Congress. The presidency, I apologize. The jury's still out on that. Does that mean in any way that you'll go back on your word and support Clinton? No, Mr. President. The answer to that is no. Clinton has gone to the point of no return. Now, we got a crisis in the Middle East. A fourth of an agreement, as far as I know, with the attack that happened past few weeks. This agreement going on in France, which, if you ask me, the Palestinians are making too many demands. I didn't know you wanted to move diplomacy, Mr. Hendrix. Let's switch to the economy, gentlemen. Mr. President, seeing that you won the first coin toss, how do you see as the state of the economy? I still see expansion. is possible. If it be prudent that Republicans at this point work with Democrats, despite the point that we're ultimately by this fall campaigning against each other. Nothing says that the Congress can't pass certain legislation. Mr. Hendrix, maybe by some point in gesture, that's true. It is hard for me to begin to imagine and see. He promised he'd fix the economy in 96. He promised he'd fix the economy in 92. Forgive me. In 1993, when they entered office, the economy grew at a slow pace. In 94, it was at a moderate pace. In 95, it started out well, but it continued to be a catastrophe. Begging your pardon, Mr. Hendrix, but if I remember correctly, that wouldn't have happened in 95 if there was no government shutdown or wrangling between yourself and the president. An official appointee is supposed to be behind his president. Forgive me, Mr. President, but I think that an appointee should work well serving his country and not in servancy to the president. That is a promise I went forth the day after the 94 election as a promise to the American people. I stand for principle and not just for political expediency. I ain't a saint. But this one thing I do know. I stand by what I believe. All right? I placed 2 pieces of legislation, and Congressman Mike Bradley, who you hailed his solution in adding for access to education in small business. There's 3 pieces of legislation for small business. I can't see why we can't pass them individually or roll them up in one in a way that's bipartisan, the way everybody can understand. And then, maybe in some way, I can move on. Mr. President, do you think Mr. Hendrix should resign at some point? Well, if he no longer supports Clinton, I'm thinking at some point before or right after the election, at this juncture, it would be prudent. Mr. Hendrix, my thinking is it's going to be before the election. But as I've said over the past 2 years, if I am to be resigned, Bill Clinton's going to have to get the gumption to fire me. That's all there is to it. I'm not gonna let down. I'm not gonna back down. I stand my ground on my principles. End of discussion. End of story. No excuses and no exceptions. Thank you, gentlemen, for the debate. We'll come back with more stories, even from what's going on with the Middle East crisis. Until next time, return back again to the exposure after the break. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Hope you enjoy listening to the J.R. Hendrix Texan Gentleman. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. Become a part of the adventure. This is the James Hendrix Empowerment Network saying until next time, get ready for the rest of the story. It's going to get more interesting from here.